Through the endless cycle of the centuries, the cones of countless trees have opened and clouds of seeds have winged their way to the forest floor. Nature has been performing a marvelous miracle, the growing and regrowing of trees, the creation of everlasting forest for the continuous use of man. Majestically rising above the tree line in the Pacific Northwest is Mount St. Helens, guardian of Spirit Lake and silent sentinel of the ages, whose summit stores up rain and snow, the lifeblood of trees. Since the beginning of time, Mount St. Helens has witnessed the endless transitions of the forest. Long before the coming of man, it has seen thousands of trees grow old and diseased, and its peak has re-echoed the thundering crash of these trees as they fell to earth in wasteful death. It has seen vast unchecked forest fires, and then this picturesque mountain witnessed the coming of man. Men have a great appreciation for trees, yet they are absurdly careless with fire, the greatest destroyer of trees. Over 70% of our forest fires have been caused by carelessness, which has resulted in the destruction of millions of dollars worth of old trees and young trees. Many a burning cigarette, thoughtlessly tossed from an automobile, has multiplied the losses from fire. To prevent these forest fires, private forest owners are spending vast sums of money for preventive methods, for the construction and maintenance of lookout towers, and for the purchase and use of firefighting equipment. Night and day in these towers, rangers keep vigilant watch. This unique device serves to locate the exact position of a fire, so that the ranger may notify the fire brigade nearest to it by telephone. The job of all the men who compose the firefighting forces is to spot the fires at the earliest possible moment, to reach the fire promptly, check its spread, and extinguish the flames before any great damage is done. While fire is the worst enemy of trees, disease and old age also take their devastating toll, for it must be remembered that timber is a crop, and trees ripen and cease to grow, just the same as any other crop. If they are not harvested when ripe, they naturally become a prey to disease or old age. Then death sets in, and they find a quiet grave on the forest floor. This is inexcusable waste, for these fallen giants can never become useful to mankind, and they are a detriment to nature because they impede the growing of young trees. But man is now cooperating with nature by harvesting trees before they die, and by scientifically preparing the way for new ones to grow in their place. A form of forest management called area selection, in which the forester selects an area where the trees have reached maturity, is now being practiced, and these trees are harvested. Green seed trees are left close by, from which seeds scatter to reforest the cut-over plot. Another method of reforestation is known as individual tree selection, in which the forester selects and measures each tree, harvesting those which are mature and leaving other trees to grow for harvesting by his son when he becomes a man. The average person looking down on this beautiful panorama, which has been selectively logged, would never know that any trees had been removed. On areas where man has failed to leave enough seed trees, and in places where fire has destroyed the second crop, private forest owners are annually planting by hand an increasing number of individual trees. And so it is by these various methods that man works with nature to grow forests again and again. A tiny first seedling, nurtured by nature and the hand of man, now reaches for the sun. Cradled in the warm earth through 5 years of sunshine and rain, the seedling grows to this size and proudly takes its place in the family of Douglas firs. At the age of 20 years, the Douglas fir family reaches the adult stage, and it is now old enough to give birth to fertile cones from which a new crop may grow. Time rolls its ceaseless course, and in 40 years, our tree family is ripe enough to be harvested and converted into pulp. Pulp, the source of paper upon which is printed the news and knowledge of mankind. And now, here is our Douglas fir family, some 80 years old, some 200 years old, ready for the harvest of forest products. The harvesting operation is begun by men who are known as fallers. They use two-edged axes to set their springboards and make the undercut. The springboard provides the faller with a solid footing. The undercut directs the line the tree will take as it falls. The head faller picks the path by gunning or sighting from the undercut down the handle of his axe, and the handle must point directly down the path he has chosen for the tree to take, so that it will come to rest where there will be the least possible breaking or splitting of the trunk or damage to other trees. When the undercut is completed, the men saw into the tree from the opposite side until it falls. Timber up the hill! After tabulating the number and lengths of the logs, the fallers move on to the next tree, making way for the bucker, who saws the trunks into the required lengths. There is enough lumber in this one tree to build a modern 7-room wooden American home. Big trees called spar trees, located at strategic points, are left standing to help in getting the timber out of the woods. This man is called a high climber, and he spends his working hours high above his fellow loggers. Cutting off the branches on the top of this tree is a safety measure for the protection of the men who will soon be working on the ground beneath the tree. The safety of the fearless high climber depends upon his ability to judge height and distance and to be expert with his axe and saw. The tree he is climbing is over 200 feet in height, and his mission is to cut off 75 feet of the top. First decided to use tall spar trees, they called in sailors from nearby ports, men whose work above the decks of old sailing vessels had made them fearless and agile. Into the woods they came to rig the spar trees, but they knew nothing about the woods, and it wasn't long before down came a sailor and up went a logger, and a high climber was born. When the high climber has completed his topping job, he goes up the tree again to connect cables, guy wires, and skylines to the spar tree. Attached to the skyline are fastened around the logs, and powerful steam skidders developing enormous power haul the logs to the railroad tracks. The mature trees weigh approximately 170 tons to the acre, and so it will be realized that the engineering problems involved in harvesting this crop are numerous and this is one of the operations of the Weyerhaeuser companies, developed through private enterprise, that co-partner of American democracy, which in this instance has resulted in steady payrolls, permanent communities, and in the building of homes, churches, schools, and countless other institutions invaluable to mankind. In areas where selective logging is practical, the logs are hauled out of the woods by tractors, followed by logging arches, which enable the crews to assemble the logs and move them through the forest with the least amount of destruction to the young growing trees. The timber is transported from the logging camps to the mills by means of a railway system consisting of hundreds of miles of mainline track with branch lines spreading through the woods in all directions, across canyons, over rivers, and through tunnels. A mighty engineering achievement and a great credit to the skill of the engineers. At the terminal of this unique railway system, the logs are transferred from rail to water by a modified steam shovel, which pushes them off the cars into the water. Boom men separate the fir, the spruce, the hemlock, and the cedar according to size and quality, and with the aid of the river currents and the tides, they guide the logs along the respective channels to the mills. The logs now approach the mills, where modern, streamlined, highly effective machines, controlled by skilled operators, will transform them into lumber and its byproducts. Forests are essential to our American economy because they actually cover 1/3 of our land area and must be depended upon to support the people living in and adjacent to that area. Over 60% of the industrial workers of the Pacific Northwest draw their paychecks from the forest products industry. Consequently, the successful operation of this industry under the American system of private enterprise contributes enormously to the livelihood of all the people. The logs are washed in this manner so that no stones or dirt shall dull the saws or cause the tooth of a saw to break off and injure an employee. The head sawyer occupies a commanding position. With uncanny accuracy growing out of years of experience, he sizes up each log in turn as it thunders on to the carriage. Through his knowledge, all of the values in each log are fully utilized. When he has finished his work, every machine operator that follows him knows at a glance just what each piece is intended to become. The seemingly casual signals the head sawyer gives with his right hand tell the whole story to his crew. In answer, they quickly and accurately adjust the machinery, and the process of turning a log into a home begins. The understanding between the head sawyer and his crew is complete, and the comradeship of production, in which every man knows that he plays a vital position on a big team, reaches its peak in the sawing operation. This sawyer cuts the cants, or pieces coming from the head saw, to fill the requirements of customers. The rough lumber moves through the mills from machine to machine on roll conveyors. This dramatic mechanical flow of raw material has been adapted and used by many other industries, but it owes its origin to the lumber industry. Through the efforts of the men on the pony saws, part of the log is developed into lumber for use in home construction. Portions of the log are shaped into identical pieces of rough lumber by the gang saw, which in one operation saws as many as 50 boards from a single piece of timber. The trimmer man continues with the fifth movement of the Symphony of Sawing. Through the skilled manipulation of his keyboard, he drops his saws to trim out all defects and to cut the pieces to desired lengths. The rough lumber flows out of the mill to the sorting tables, where it is marked and sorted for grades, lengths, and sizes. A bridge crane lifts the loads to waiting carriers for transfer to the dry kilns, where most of the lumber goes for controlled seasoning, a vital part of modern manufacturing processes, which ensures the maintenance of standard quality. Giant cranes pile lumber in the storage yards, awaiting shipment to the four corners of the world. Out of the mills of the forest industry flow products which have done more to build up our country than any other raw material. The dried lumber now moves on to the planing mill to be transformed into standard forms for flooring, ceiling, molding, siding, and framing. These surfacing machines are tested and adjusted with precision gauges to ensure exact size and matching. Repeated inspection assures no deviation from the standard. The men in the management of Weyerhaeuser take pride in the products which together they manufacture, stamping the lumber with the name and trademark of the company so consumers may know when they are using Foursquare Forest products. That these products shall reach customers in the best possible condition, each freight car is cleaned and carefully lined and loaded by men wearing canvas shoe covers. In the shingle mill, red cedar blocks are cut into shingles by expert artisans. $16,000 is invested by the owners in mills, machines, tools, and timber to keep each employee steadily at work. Only out of close cooperation between owners, management, workers, and distributors can such an organization as this turn out the best forest products at fair prices and pay wages, dividends, and taxes steadily. The shingles which slide down from the floor above are sorted and packed for their journey out into the world of roofs, which they are destined to cover. Shavings planed off and finishing the lumber go to the Prestolog plant to be pressed into fuel. Prestologs are a highly efficient fuel, suitable for every cooking and heating need. Each Prestolog contains the equivalent of an armload of ordinary wood, and a bushel of waste shavings makes one Prestolog when pressed by this machine under 160,000 pounds pressure. Through this unique invention, sawdust and shavings formerly burned as waste by lumber mills are now conserved. Last year, 30 million Prestologs were sold, and that represents 120,000 tons subtracted from the annual waste of a great renewable natural resource. Men working in laboratories have discovered over 4,000 uses for the fiber of a tree. And these searching men are putting the forest crop to still more marvelous uses through penetrating study and countless experiments. Here is illustrated in miniature the process of making pulp from wood chips, which are cooked with steam in an acid made from sulfur, lime rock, and pure water. The pulp that results from this process is thoroughly washed and cleaned before flowing onto the forming conveyor, composed of a traveling copper screen, and then it passes into this gigantic machine, in which it goes over presses and steam-heated drying rolls to emerge as sheets of pulp ready for shipment after being pressed and wrapped in bales, which will be later converted into natural paper products derived from pulp. Development which came out of laboratory research is known as plywood, a type of laminated wood designed to utilize lumber more economically. Carefully selected logs shorn of their bark revolve against sharp knives that shear off thin sheets of wood with the speed and motion of an unrolling carpet. After passing through drying machines, the sheets of veneer are carefully graded, and plywood is made by gluing together 3 or more thicknesses of veneer with the grain in adjacent pieces at right angles, thus giving plywood the great strength for which it is known. Tests have proved that properly designed plywood, pound for pound, is stronger than steel. Following a smoothing process, the finished product comes forth in this manner. Plywood, smooth, strong, and durable, a praiseworthy tribute to the initiative and enterprise of the industry. Among the numerous examples of this process are plywood panels in variegated sizes, patterns, and colors. A recent innovation developed by Weyerhaeuser men is glued lumber, in which short pieces of wood are grooved and glued into any desired length, and narrow strips are glued together to form wide boards, which are as strong as the natural wood. The strength of Nuloc is as great as the strength of one piece, an entirely new and promising development in the manufacture of lumber, one which uses more of the tree and hence will contribute further to the conservation. Shingles are now stained in many colors to beautify the roof of a home. Decorated wall boards add quietness and warmth. Balsam wool, as warm as sheep's wool, lines the walls to keep out cold in winter and heat in summer. These things come from the tree, these and many more. Thus, through research, the forest products industry is unlocking the secrets of the forest, developing modern products, and solving the problem of waste. All these forest product mills and are transported by train, by truck, and by boat to enrich and beautify and make happy the lives of men and women and boys and girls everywhere. Forest products supply 60% of all the rail freight business that goes out of the Pacific Northwest, and the steamship lines rely on this industry for 80% of their outbound freight. Soon the lumber we see here will be taking its place in the homes of the world, highly efficient homes, practical, yet artistic and individual. Because timber is a crop, it is a continuing source of building material, and millions of people are expressing themselves through wood in their homes. The products of the forest have brought shelter and warmth and beauty and news and knowledge and employment and places to work and places to worship. Together we have seen the trees of the future take root and develop through their life cycle of 80 years. And now this young sapling, a future friend and grower of trees, starts down his life path. Out of ever-recurring crops of trees comes nature's marvelous material for creating the cornerstones of American democracy: homes, churches, farm buildings, and schools. The life cycle of trees and men begins again. Trees and men, the builders of a nation.